So, Ghostly Ghouls, this is your feedback for your evaluation question 1. Um, so, just off the bat, what I think we need here is an introduction. So, if you look at Jump Scares 1 here, there's their production company. If you notice, there's a starting section here where we explain what genre is, what conventions are basically, because then that way we're kind of introducing, like we would with an essay, what are conventions. What do we mean by forms? So what you might want to consider here is, like we talked about in class, there are 2 types of conventions. You've got the genre of horror that you've used, and then you've got the form conventions, things like the masthead goes at the top, the trailer uses fades, it has the title of the film come up on a slate at the end, that type of stuff. So form conventions and genre conventions. Second piece of feedback is this is an ideal opportunity for you to bring in the theorists that we've been talking about and how they saw genre or what conventions were. So you can bring in Burton, in that genre means type. You can discuss, as indeed this group in Jump Scare have, things like they have audience expectations is based on genre. Other things like, for example, there needs to be kind of like similarities and difference, which is Steve Nell, because that addresses the use, develop kind of approach. Okay, so introduction, we need more than that. Second thing is they put a mood board in, which is quite useful to kind of categorize the things that are related to the horror genre. Now again, with you could put in your 9 subgenres of horror here, because that would address the fact you're talking about subgenres and how they've got different conventions. So moving on to the next section, this is nice where you've got your side-by-sides going on there. This is good, yep. That's good, and you've explained it, so that's nice, yep. Very good. I would also talk about the typography rather than just the fact it's a masthead. The fact that you've used that particular font must be justified as well in terms of why you've got that on there. If we're talking about subgenre now, this is interesting. So you haven't actually introduced that earlier on. I would make that a bit clearer and have your subgenre up here of what a monster what a monster genre would contain, and do that as a mood board. Now you should be able to nick that from your development section in your research. You should have done a mood board already. Okay, so these are interesting. When we've got some sort of side-by-side stuff in here as well, that's interesting. You've also got some comments about evaluating. So where you have got, just be careful with words like compared. You need to make sure you're spelling that right in these aspects. That's important. Okay, so far we've got quite a lot of images and we've got the text underneath. That's all well and good. Be careful of things like that. That would lose you marks because that's not excellently presented, so we need to look back at how we're doing that. So again, if you're talking about stock characters, we'd probably want to have some form of presentation here where you're talking about what we mean by stock characters, like what are they. Don't go straight to the side by side, actually explain what they are. I like the fact that you've got the GIFs on here. That's nice. That kind of justifies it quite nicely. You've talked about these characters, but we haven't really gone into who this is because it's just a title. So we need to kind of have, like, who is this stock character? Is it the final girl? Is it the victim? Like her. We need to kind of get that across. Also, the fact that you haven't got the other characters in there, you would probably need to deal with that. You've mentioned Cabin in the Woods, but we haven't got any images here from Cabin in the Woods, so I don't think. Okay, moving on. So you've labelled it up. This is good. Okay, again, rather than using the grab from that within Photoshop, it'd be better if you'd have taken the screen grab and put that on there. So you might want to adjust that because, again, excellent presentation is what we're looking for. And then under here you've got the trailers for each one. Really, we should be putting your trailer in there as well to make that consistent. So this is good. We've got direct address. Yep. Okay. That's good. Yep. So the thing you could talk about here is, does this convey monster? Like, what is it that makes this a monster subgenre? Because that isn't, and that isn't either. That's supernatural. So earlier on you've established that this says your film is a monster, but you've also got some slasher conventions. But in your side by sides, we've got orphan, which is supernatural. So again, you need to think about comparing it to the things you said it was. We don't have a monster, because if you're saying that, that is not in convention with a monster poster, which is where you would normally see the root of destruction, or you would see, like, you know, the back of the monster or something like that. So I think you need to revisit what you're comparing that to in your real media texts. Again, this section doesn't really talk about the conventions you would expect from the monster genre that you're saying it is earlier on. Okay, so it's called the billing block, so make sure you finish that off. Yep. Yeah, that's good. Also, you can mention it's a what do you call it? It's a stamp, a copyright stamp. Now, if you're talking about the billing block, you should really be putting the thing maybe from your trailer in there to talk about the fact you put it in your trailer at the end as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we've got social media. Yep. Tagline. Yeah, again, you'd want a side by side on these ones is here as well, just to show that you can show it on another poster. That's the sort of thing they do. We're not just doing it for the sake of it. Be careful, necrosis, spelt wrong now. Didn't notice that on your poster. Just have a look here. Oh, it's different now. Yeah, so you might want to get a different image grab, because that's an outdated one by the looks of it. Good, you've put a conclusion in, which is nice. So you've talked about how you've used it, and then we get onto the big bit, which is the trailer. We've got a side by side. Okay, that's good. So you got disequilibrium there and there. So what you need to do is explain what disequilibrium is here. Yeah, what it's supposed to do, and then why you would not have that in your trailer. So that's really, really important. We need to use that theory from those essays we've been talking about, that you wouldn't have equilibrium because it shows it, slows it all down. You've gone straight into the disequilibrium. So, you know, we need to talk about the theory by saying why you wouldn't see it in a teaser trailer before we can talk about the bits that we have got in there. Otherwise, you're only covering a third. You also haven't told me why you haven't got a resolution in it. So again, all we've talked about is that one section. We need to kind of talk about, like, in a film, so put like the ending of a film there and talk about how you would have a resolution there, and then about why you wouldn't have it in a trailer. Okay, and then Nana, we need a bit more here about settings because we haven't got any images. Okay, that's good. You've sort of justified your decisions here. Doesn't really show that you understand where you would set a monster film though. So that needs to be elaborated on a bit too. Just bouncing back up here as well, where you talked about your characters, stock characters, like who would be the stock characters for a monster film, because these are all slasher oriented. So we kind of need to make our mind up, you know, are we talking about monster, are we talking about slasher? If we're saying it's a bit of both, then we need to make sure we're covering both on there particularly, yeah. We've mentioned that here about not having a monster poster to compare it to. Okay, so just continuing with this, we need to finish off the beginning, middle and end, the resolution, disruption, equilibrium bit, re-equilibrium bit. This obviously is in dire need of some side-by-side. We haven't compared it to anything here, so this is all about your film, but it's not showing any monster films or slasher films that you would compare this to. So that's kind of, you know, not complete, that section. Here you've mentioned Conjuring 2, but I've got nothing here to see the Conjuring 2. So again, we don't really have the side-by-side here to kind of elaborate what that's on for. The other thing is as well, we need to talk about the order in which these titles come in. Like, why does the film title come in at the end? You know, what other text did you have on there? You know, those things need to be put in there as well. But the side-by-side comparison is really, really important. We have that. And then trailer length, we've got Alien there and that one there. This is the opportunity for you to talk about why a teaser trailer is only 1 minute long. So for example, you've got that on there, which is great, but we need to know why it's only a minute long. Okay, this is quite substantial actually. So we've now got lighting. So yeah, we've talked about the side-by-side and the lighting. You've talked about low-key lighting. That's good. We've talked about the montage sections, and you've re-edited it, so it's just that section, so that's good. Well done. Yeah, this is really good, where you've talked about all your shot types like that. This is nice. Yeah, I'm liking that. Good. So to finish this off then, apart from the individual sections that people need to change their own bits, the last thing that I would say is you need a conclusion to this, which is where you answer that question. It's an evaluation, so you need to think about how successful is your product. So if you've used lots of conventions and followed them, it doesn't mean that your work is in danger of becoming a bit too predictable, because remember, Neil says repetition indifference. So, you know, how is your film if it's using all these things, maybe becoming a bit predictable. However, if you're developing them, which is interesting, then is your film in danger of not being recognised as a horror? So you just need like a kind of conclusion that sums up everything you've said about how successfully you've kind of met and maybe moved these conventions forward. For example, did setting it in a police station actually work? Yeah. But overall, pretty good. I'd say we're kind of working we're not quite there yet, but we are kind of working towards an A grade. We just need the other areas to be kind of caught up and finished off. So at the moment, if we handed this in now, I'd probably say you're in the kind of C grade sort of area so far. Thanks a lot.